Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well, hope you're good, as per usual. Before we get into today's episode, got to do a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you are following me on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod, not just for the spooky season, but for the rest of the year and soon next year, season 3, to be kept to date on everything and anything that I am doing, reading, watching, playing, and all that jazz. You'll be kept up to date on Twitter there. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you are subscribed, don't forget to ring that bell so you can get notifications whenever I post a new episode, which I post a new episode every Sunday on my YouTube channel. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, I want to say a huge welcome back to Spooky Week 3, for more bizarre 80s B-tier horror movie goodness with today's episode. I'm really excited for this one. It's another movie that I've never watched before and that I didn't even know existed until a couple of months ago, thanks to another podcast that I listened to, which was That Was Pretty Scary. A horror film podcast hosted by Freddie Prinze Jr., one of my favourite actors of all time, and John Lee Brody. Together they break down every horror film they've ever seen. It's a long list, and the two voices come from a place of experience, education, and most of all, a shared love of horror movies, from the classics to new releases, from cult favourites to horror films from around the world. These two cover it all. I do recommend That Was Pretty Scary. If you like classic horror movies that I've been looking at, or new horror films, definitely it's worth checking out. They're basically everywhere. So That Was Pretty Scary. Go check them out. But it's because of them. They did an episode on today's film that just intrigued me. It pulled me in. It fascinated me. And I was like, I've got to watch this for Halloween. It sounds right up my alley. And it's going to fit in perfectly for the topic for my spooky month. So today's movie is the 1985 cult classic horror movie, The Stuff. Yeah, we're going to be watching The Stuff. Again, I only know from what they've said about it, but it really pulled me in. The idea that there is this like white goo that is found and that it's delicious and that, you know, these people try to basically market it and sell it to everybody, and lo and behold, the problem is when you eat the stuff, you want nothing but the stuff, and you crave the stuff, and you try to force other people to eat the stuff, and the stuff sort of takes over humanity and all that, and it just sounds fascinating and evil and 80s, and I'm just really excited to get into it. Gonna do the IMDb voiceover. All right, so you ready for this? So here we go. When a mysterious white and gooey but delicious substance begins oozing from the Earth's surface, it makes a great new dessert product. But this new dessert has a sinister origin. It's an entity that takes over its victims' minds while making them crave more of it. The Stuff. I absolutely love what was one hell of an idea, of a concept for not just a horror movie, but a movie in general. You know, you got a delicious, mysterious goo that oozes from the earth that tastes delicious, and once you eat it, you want nothing but the stuff. You crave the stuff. You want the stuff constantly. And I love the poster. Like, what it says on the poster is fantastic. So if you ever seen this movie, just go into Google and Google The Stuff, and then go into images and look for the poster that says warning on the top. It's a fantastic poster, but I love what's written on it. So it goes, warning. If you see the stuff in stores, call the police. If you have it in your home, don't touch it, get out. The stuff is a product of nature, a deadly living organism. It is addictive and destructive. It can overcome your mind and take over your body, and nothing can stop it. The Stuff. Oh, I love it. That's proper 80s sort of horror. I love it. I crave that kind of stuff, especially now after watching so many B-tier horror movies. I'm really a huge fan of this series, and I want to keep this series going after Halloween. I'm gonna have to look into more and watch a lot more because they're just so fun and and so creative and imaginative and just silly but great at the same time. And you can see why these movies have caught on over the years and why they've been such cult classics. As for the stuff, the idea and concept behind it sounds like, not just right up my alley, but this is the kind of stories that I would read, in terms of books, in terms of short novels, short horror like novel sort of stories that have just got a weird, odd sort of context, and they're only like 200 pages long. It's a quick sort of horror kick, and this is what it feels like to me. So I'm really, really looking forward to get into this one. As for the film's cast, we have Michael Moriarty, fantastic name. He plays David. We got Andrea Markovicki, who plays Nicole. Garrett Morris plays Chocolate Charlie. Paul Salvino as Colonel Spears. Scott Bloom as Jason. Danny Aliteo as Vickers. Patrick O'Neill as Fletcher. James Dixon as the postman. And Alexander Scorby as Evans. So that is your cast. This movie was written and directed by Larry Cohen. Do apologise there, Larry. As for the production, shooting for the film was brief, starting in August 1984 and wrapping shortly in September. Filming locations included New Paltz, New York, New York City, and Los Angeles. Post-production began in January 1985 at Riley Studios in Los Angeles and continued into the summer. The Monarch Hotel was notably used as Colonel Malcolm Grummet Spears' headquarters in the film. Multiple puppets were used to simulate the deaths of characters who had become hosts of the stuff. 4 models of Garrett Morris's head were made for Charlie's transformation sequence, one of which Cohen still claims to own. When the stuff was eaten on screen, ice cream, yogurt, and whipped cream were used. The script was an original story by Cohen. He said, "My main inspiration was the consumption and corporate greed found in our country and the damaging products that were being sold. I was constantly reading in the newspapers about various goods and materials being recalled because they were harming people. For example, you had foods being pulled off the market because they were hazardous to people's health." Cohen cited as his influence the sheer volume of junk food we consume every day. We continue to eat these foods despite the fact some of them are killing us. That's when I started thinking that the stuff could be an imaginary product, in this case an ice cream dessert, that is being consumed by millions and is doing irreparable damage to humanity. Everybody is gobbling down this yummy food, so how could it possibly be wrong for us? Cohen wanted to cast Arcadia Hall as Chocolate Chip Charlie, since he thought he was not only a good actor but a rising star. The executives at New World Pictures, however, wanted someone more recognizable and thus cast Garrett Morris instead. Morris did not enjoy working with Cohen. In a random roles section at AV Club, where Morris was asked about the stuff, he simply said that if he did not respect someone, he would not talk about them, and therefore he had nothing to say about Larry Cohen. Now, I find it quite interesting here where he cites the idea of the sheer volume of junk food that we consume every day, that we eat it and consume it, even though that we all know that it's killing us. And I'm sure, that was completely right for the 80s, especially how, even though health standards have gotten better now and we've got less preservatives, especially in the UK anyway, I can speak personally for the UK, a lot of preservatives and artificial sweeteners and all that kind of thing, all the things that's bad for you was taken out of sweets and food and products years ago when I was very younger, just before, not long after I was born, but I grew up long enough where I could have all these bad things that were not very good for you. And eventually Jamie Oliver and people like him came along and took them out. So I can speak for the UK, like here, we've sort of counteracted and gone far into making sure that people have a lot more balanced diet. I can't really speak much for America. I don't really know. From what I've heard, you still have a lot of things in American products that are really, really not good for you that you shouldn't have in there. Um, but that being said, no matter where you are in the world, especially if you're in a country that has sort of access to a lot of sort of supermarkets and that sort of thing, and easy to grab fast food, that it's true. Even today we are still gorging down fast food and products that we shouldn't be eating with stuff inside them that's makes us depressed. Because the idea is, if you feel like crap, it's probably because you're putting crap into your engine. You've got to think of your body, and again, I'm not going to get political here, but you've got to think of your body like an engine, like a car. You put the wrong fuel into your car, or you put the wrong stuff into it, eventually that car is going to give out and stop. And it's the same with your body. You put the wrong stuff in it, your body's not going to work at peak capacity, and eventually it's going to stop, and death and all that comes along with it. So I love how sort of he took the idea came from looking the world around him, saw sort of the rise of commercialism and consumerism and that sort of thing, and was like, I would like to make a movie of this just to show the real sort of effect it could have. If people have the stuff, like the stuff could be anything. That I think that's kind of the point that I'm sort of working at here. That he calls it the stuff, but the stuff could be anything, and that if you eat the stuff and everybody else is eating it, why should it be bad for you if everybody else is eating it? And I think that's what I'm trying to gauge from what reading his quotes here. But that's just got me more and more interested and fascinated into watching this film. Because again, I know it's a horror movie, but I feel like it might be a sort of comment on political stuff and that sort of thing. Even though I don't like to get political, I find that stuff rather interesting, especially when it's done well in films. So that is the production. That is also my sort of introduction over. I'm going to go now and watch the stuff. I'm really, really excited for this one. It definitely seems right up my alley. I've watched the trailer to it, even though I tend to not do that. I was just so fascinated that I wanted to watch the trailer. And after watching it, reading about it, listening to that was pretty scary with Freddie Prinze Jr. And reading the quotes from the writer and director, I'm all in. I'm fascinated. I'm absolutely interested. So, without further ado, it's time to watch the 1985 cult classic, The Stuff. So, I am back after watching The Stuff, or should I say, The Stuff. That sounds better, the second one, doesn't it? Um, as I was finishing up, as I do with every review, I'll usually do a review of a movie and I will sit and I will write notes. And usually all my notes are just bullet points, and then from there, I that's what I work off. Um, but what I realised, there's about 3 to 4 pages of notes here. This is the most notes I think I've ever done for any film, which is strange because this film's only an hour 30 minutes long. I've watched longer movies than this that had short amount of notes. I've watched movies shorter than this or the same amount of time as this who have got less notes than this film. I don't understand what I do understand, but just looking from my notes, I was like, Jesus, I have a lot to say about this film. Which then kind of brings it into my first lot of things that I want to talk about, is that I am quickly falling in love with this genre. I know I said it for Killer Clowns, but definitely 100% now. I am a fan of this genre. What they are able to achieve on such a small budget without CGI, and that they're able to create such fantastic, cheesy horror. Um, I'm now beginning to understand why this genre is so widely loved, even today. Why today, with all the films and technology that we have in terms of movie making, why people still want to go back to the 80s, still want to go back to the 70s, to the classics, to the B tier sort of horror movies, because what they were able to do with, a shoestring budget or a smaller budget, and what most horrors are done today, is incredible. And that's why a lot of people like Blumhouse horror movies, why Blumhouse has done so well, because I think like The Invisible Man, I think that was created again, this is not guaranteed, like, unless I googled it, but I think that was made for like under 10 million, The Invisible Man, and that grossed a lot of money. And this is why Blumhouse and A24 and a lot of these smaller production companies that have smaller budgets are making such quality, incredible horror movies and great cinema in general, because I guess when you've got a smaller budget, you can't rely on the CGI and all this. And that you have to rely on the story, the idea, the concept, the practical effects, the acting, the dialogue. You've got to rely on these little things that all come together. And I feel like in the 80s was just the best time, was just the melting pot for creativity, for madness, wackiness, for being very much balls to the wall of like, screw it, let's just make something bizarre and let's just go for it, and they do. And with the stuff, it's another one of those greats of the genre. It's an hour 30 minutes long. It's quick, it's fast, it just gets going, straight away, way faster than the Critters and way faster than Killer Clowns do. For example, to kind of give, if you haven't seen those reviews that I did, go back and listen to those that I did. Week 1 was Critters, week 2 was Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But like in Critters, it starts off where you zoom into the asteroid and you realize that there's been a prison break, the Critters have escaped, and then they land on Earth, and then we get a bit of the sort of bounty hunters, as well as we get to see a bit of the humans, and then the story gets going eventually. As for Killer Clowns, it's a bit more quicker, but still it takes a while before any sort of actually killings or anything silly or wacky sort of happens. In this, I generally thought that the version of the film that I had watched was wrong. That was broken, because it just begins like straight away. Like you'd think with most movies, even older films, even not just newer films, but you'll have a title screen, or you have like a wide angle shot that zooms into a character or a scene or building, or something like that, or just like an existential shot of like a shot of a quarry or a shot of Antarctica, and say Antarctica 1974, abandoned research base or something like that. You don't get that. Like straight away, it just starts, and there's a guy walking. I would say a security guard just walking through, and then he finds the stuff on the floor. And obviously, I'll get into that in a minute, but it just begins, and I had to go through a couple versions of the film to realize, oh, this is just how this film starts. Like it gets into it. Like it knows what it is, it knows what it wants to do, it knows what you're there for. You're there to see the stuff. You're not there about character development and emotional drama or anything like that. You just want to see the stuff. You don't know what it is, all you know is that you come to see the stuff, and straight away you get it. And I love that. There's no messing about. Get into it, and so I'm going to follow in those footsteps, and I'm just going to get into the review. The story, this film, again, as you come to expect from this genre, as you come to expect from these all the reviews that I've done, it's silly, it's cheesy, the characters have funny dialogue. Once the film gets going, which it does, it keeps on going and doesn't really stop. The cheese just keeps growing. The cheese keeps fermenting and maturing. And again, as a cheese connoisseur that I am, I don't just like pie and beans. I like cheese as well. Okay, bit of lore there for anybody who is a frequent listener to the Nerdstalgic podcast. Nothing to add to the lore of Luke the Human, the host of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I also like cheese, but as the cheesiness matures and grows to something more stronger, it just gets more wackier and crazy. Because again, the whole idea of the stuff, it's meant to be about corporate greed and how things are being advertised to people, and that we will, if we're told by the masses, not just by advertising companies but by friends and family, if we say something is good, most people will be like sheep and will just go out and buy it and eat it and drink it and so on, so forth. And that all that thing, the writer really, and the writer and director, should I say, really hits the nail on the head here of following that concept, and it works really, really well. As well with the characters and the dialogue, it's stupid. I'm not saying it's the best acting in the world, but again, I've said this about other things that I reviewed, not just B tier sort of horror movies, but if you don't go in with heightened expectations, expecting greatness, you have way more fun and enjoyment not just in life, but in movies and video games. If you're going enjoying it for what it is, not for what you want or hope it to be, you'll have more fun with it. And again, with these B tier horror films, I'm going in with nothing. I'm going in with my glass empty. There is nothing in there. I'm just going in looking for a good time. And do I get serviced? I get everything and anything that I want and extra. I get a happy ending. It's great. I get everything that I want, full board. My cup is full by the end, and I want more. You know, um, and like I said, I just really, really love this genre. There is so much to it, and I even after Halloween, I've just got to watch more of these. If you want more from me, I will happily go and watch more of these sort of films, because especially like with the stuff, it's gone. It's going, and it goes, and it's silly, stupid, and funny, and I love it. And I would even say I would rather watch like B tier horror movies than anything that's being made today. I love horror. I grew up with horror. I probably shouldn't when I was younger, but my parents were very much of the fact of, you can stay up and watch this movie with us if you want, but mind you, it's scary, and if you have nightmares, it's your own fault. Sometimes I was brave and I would stay and get nightmares, but, I'd stay and enjoy it, and sometimes I would whimper and go upstairs. Um, but yeah, I grew up with horror movies. And the horror movies that I grew up with, and these older horror movies, I would say are way better than whatever you're getting nowadays. You get some good ones through the small independent horror studios, but the big budget horror studios, I don't know what they're doing, but they really missed the beat, and I feel like I am having a renaissance at the moment where I want to go back and check out these older, campier, sillier films, because yes, they're not gold, they're not the best in the world, but for what they are, they're fun. And that's just what horror should be. You want to be scared, you want to be creeped out, you want to, you know, see things that are putrid and disgusting and grotesque, but you also want to have that adrenaline pumping. You want to be, oh, I wonder if they survive. I wonder if they get out. I wonder just what happens next. I want to be scared, but I want to be excited. I want to feel all the emotions at the same time. And with a lot of modern horror, I'm either bored or I've seen it done so many times, either done well or not done well, that um, I can just spot it a mile off. Like, this is going to happen now. Oh, there's a jump scare. See, I know it happening. With these films, you just with these BT horror movies, you can't sort of question or judge what's going to happen next, because it's so odd and strange. And oh well, hodgepodge is not a very nice word to use in this context, because they're not hodgepodge. These are actually quite well done. um, but because you don't know what's coming next, you can't predict, and you're on your toes, and I think that's what makes it more fun, these sort of films. So um, yeah, I love it, and I just love the story and the concept behind this film, which I'll get into more when I actually do the review. But before I get into talking about the film, if you want to watch the stuff, and you want to sort of before you carry on with the rest of the review, if you would like to watch it or you're interested in it, on YouTube, if you type in the stuff, the full movie's on there. That's where I watched it. I watched the full film there in good quality HD. I put it on my TV, 1080p. The only issue I had, which probably you'll run into as well, unless you pay for it, is that you will run into ads. But that, for me, didn't really ruin my experience. I had a few ads as I was watching it, because it is like an hour, 30 minutes. So you will get a few ads. But if you want to watch this movie, it's on YouTube. Um, so you can have a pause it here and watch it, or after the review, if I've sort of done my job, then you can go watch it on there. It's a fantastic movie. I highly recommend to go check it out. So the film, as I mentioned, just starts, and you have this security guard in, I think it's the Antarctic. Again, it doesn't really say, it just kind of starts. But, you have this wide shot of this security guard going around looking for somebody, and there's snow all around, and he's walking through, and all of a sudden, as he's walking, he points his torch down, and he sees this white goop on the floor, this white stuff on the ground. Now, obviously, this old bloke, I don't know what his parents are doing, but they probably weren't doing their job. because I like to think that my parents did a good job, and I like to think that a lot of my listeners' parents did a good job. Because if you ever saw anything on the floor that you didn't know what it was, you were told from a young age, don't touch it, and definitely don't touch it and put it in your mouth and lick it, or anything. I just don't go near it. If you don't know what it is, don't touch it. Ask a grown up, sort of thing, right? Obviously, this guy never got the memo. His parents never gave him that lesson, because the first thing he does as soon as he sees it, instantly he's like, "Oh, I'll put my hand in it. Oh, what's this?" And again, straight away, no sort of like moment of should I do this, should I not do this, is this a good idea? He just goes and licks it like an ice cream, and then he's like, "Oh, that's quite nice, that's delicious," and he just keeps licking his fingers, and I'm like, did nobody teach you just not to pick things off the ground? There's no such thing as street food, okay? You know, you can't just pick things off the ground and eat it and, oh, street candy. No, that's how you die. That's how, you get liver failure and your kidneys shut down. But he does. He puts it in his mouth and he licks it, and then he's like, he finds it delicious, and he gets his mate. His mate comes over, which is obviously he wasn't taught the same lesson when he was younger. He goes, "Oh, look, try this," and his mate doesn't question it, doesn't go, "What is it? Why are you licking it?" He just goes, "Oh," puts his hand in it and goes, "This is nice. This is good." Now, again, they could be in the Arctic. That, for all they know, could be chemical waste. It could be, I don't know, somebody that day, that morning, shoveled penguin crap, poo. It could be anything really. It could be, a new form of fuel. Anything, you're not gonna lick it. Basically, is what I'm trying to get at here. But this guy didn't, and obviously it makes sense for the film he does, because if he doesn't, then there's no such thing as this movie. But it's very much, I'm sitting there going, why? Why are you doing this? Don't do that. I'm just screaming at the TV like, why? And so him and his mate, they try it and like, oh, this is nice. And the other mate goes, we got to package this. We got to sell it. We got to find some way to get this out to the masses. We can get rich off this. This stuff's delicious. And straight away, I'm just reminded of like the Ian Malcolm scene from Jurassic Park, where it's like, I'm going to paraphrase, so I don't know the full quote off by heart, but he goes, you get this thing, and before you know what it is, you're packaging it, and you're selling it, and you put it on lunchboxes, and you put it on t-shirts, and you're selling it, and blah, 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 blah. And in my mind, I'm thinking, like, this is a real Ian Malcolm situation of, like, yeah, they've just found something, but they have no idea what it is, they don't know what it does, they don't know the effects it has on human brains, all they know is that it tastes delicious. For all I know, and for all you beans and folks listening, for all we know, poison tastes great, right? But have you ever asked anybody who ate poison if it was nice? No, because they're dead, right? Simply put, this is why we don't put things in our mouths if we don't know what it is, right? So I'm not saying, I'm not advocating to eat poison, but I'm basically saying there's a reason that you don't put things in your mouth that you don't know what they are. But straight away, these guys are eating it and going, we should package this, we can make millions. And anyway, it jump cuts, like, however, it doesn't tell you how long of a period this jump cut is. But after these two guys try it, you never really figure out what happens to these blokes again. You never really see them, but you would imagine as the idea of this, the stuff takes over and they die, or then again they probably join the hive mind and then die. Then sort of we're introduced to our main characters. So you have Jason, is a little boy. He wakes up for a bite to eat in the middle of the night, and he goes into his fridge, opens the fridge, and sees that one of the stuff tubs, which is like a yogurt. It's like by this stage they've already packaged it. They've already got it set in stores, and people are eating it. And this stuffed jar, it's fallen over, and the goop, it's alive. It's like a viscous sort of substance. Anybody doesn't know what a viscous substance is? It's one of them substances that when you hit something with an impact, it solidifies, and that when you touch it, it goes all gloopy. It's a very viscous sort of substance. Anyway, that scientific word, but basically it's one of those sort of gloopy, sort of moving, alive, white stuff. And then obviously the kid freaks out. His dad comes out, catches him, like, what's the matter? What's wrong? Son goes, what's in the fridge? The dad opens the fridge, and as you would expect in most horror, dad opens the fridge, and the stuff is fine. It's not all over the place. It's not spilled. It's in the jar, fine. Kids freaking out, don't like it. I saw it. I'm not going to eat it. It's alive. Blah blah blah. Kid goes to bed, and then the dad straight away he eats the stuff. And again, I know, like, as soon as you see the stuff anywhere or anybody eating it, you know that they're gone. That's it. They're addicted. That once you have the first mouthful, that's it. You want nothing but the stuff, right? And so the dad's gone. He's at it. He's baloney. He's gone. See you later, dad. Then the kid goes back to bed, and that's sort of his sort of beginning of his story. Then we get introduced to David Moore. The reason they call him David Moore is because once he gets what he wants more. Which, again, he says that about 2 or 3 times in the film, and each time it made me smile. Again, another bit of cheesy dialogue. But he is an ex-Fed who's turned to a corporate spy who does like espionage, that sort of thing for corporate companies. Sort of there are other people as well who appear in the story, but Jason and David are your two main characters. David, he's like the comic relief, but also he's your sort of he's kind of like your hero character. Like, Jason's the hero character as well, but you get a lot more time spent with David as his job. He is hired by other sort of dairy and yogurt or should I say yogurt, and ice cream companies to basically figure out what the stuff is, because they haven't been able to figure out what makes the stuff, what the secret ingredient is. And I ended up learning a lot of stuff actually about the FDA and how, like, there's a quote in the movie where there is I can't remember what the clause is, but there's a certain clause in the FDA that protects certain big sort of billion-dollar sort of beverages sort of companies and food companies, that if there is a secret ingredient and there's like a certain thing that makes that product unique, like Coca-Cola, for example. They actually use Coke as an example. There's a reason we don't know what the secret formula is to Coke, because whenever a beverage company has to releases a new sort of drink or product or food, they have to release all the contents in it, whereas certain big companies don't have to if it's a secret ingredient. As long as the FTA or FTC or whatever, they know about it, that's fine. But apart from that, that ingredient can be kept sort of a secret. And I learned that through this film, and I was quite fascinated. I didn't know that was a thing. I just thought, like, obviously I knew that it was a secret, but I thought it was like certain people knew, but that there are clauses in place where protect these big companies. But because of all things like this, the other ice cream companies can't figure out what the stuff is and why it's so delicious and why it's so addictive, and how can they basically get whatever this ingredient is, whatever makes the stuff, and how can they put it into their product for mass production, again, as companies do. So they hire in David. His job is to try and figure it out and figure out what the stuff is. And I love sort of the interesting way this film was shot, because you get the moments where you get to spend time with David and you get to spend time with Jason and the other characters as well, but you also get to see the growth of the stuff. You get to see the stuff's popularity. For example, how the public reacts to the stuff, how that every time when the film begins and you see Jason, he goes to the store, how you only get a few sort of places that actually sell the stuff, and it's not on every single shelf. It's just there in one section of a new product called the stuff, and that they must have went to a real shopping mall for this, or superstore, whatever you want to call it, because there was sort of footage of people putting a tub, like they would a tub of ice cream or a tub of yogurt, tub of the stuff into their bags, and people were eating it. And obviously Jason's seen what it is. He doesn't like it. So you have the moments where Jason's going through a store and he's tipping all the stuff on the floor so nobody can eat it. He's telling everybody it's poison, it's bad for you, don't eat it, it's not good for you, all that jazz. He's seeing the effects it has on his parents. He's like, don't eat it. But you also sort of get to see the things of the advertising, the catchy songs, the catchy slogans. enough is never enough with the stuff. How people act when they're hooked on the stuff. Once you see the stuff, sort of cartons or containers around anybody in the film, you know that they're gone for, that character is dead, that they're already hooked on the stuff. There's no saving them, and I find it all fascinating. And again, this film on a small budget was able to get the sort of the advertisement done. You see billboards, you see tons of different cartons of the stuff. They even did their own song on the background. They even made a TV advert. If you go onto YouTube and type in the stuff TV advert, it's a full, I think, a minute to a minute 20 TV advert for the stuff. So they really went high budget on the advertising, which again, it makes sense for the story, because one sort of bit of trivia that we learn from the film as you watch it is the fact of David eventually tracks down the bloke who owns the big dairy company that these two guys that discovered the stuff. And he explains to them, these two blokes, they came to me with the stuff, and they were so addicted to it, and it was amazing, and that he basically bought it off them, and he mass produced it, and then he managed to get it advertise it so much. And then David's like, "What happened to those blokes?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know." He said they were like forced. It's like they found the stuff and they just had that urge to find somebody like me who could get the word out about the stuff and to make the stuff fully available to the masses of people. And again, you slowly start to get these little bits here and there of how the stuff is slowly taking over the world, how it's slowly taking over people. And David finds himself in because the bigger cities take longer to take over, because there are some people who won't eat the stuff, because some people obviously lactose intolerant. So if the stuff is a yogurt, if potentially it's got dairy in it, well, we know it doesn't, but it might do. So there might be people who don't now eat it there. It might be people who are vegetarian, blah, blah, blah. So bigger cities, it's harder to take over as quick. Whereas David finds himself going to smaller cities and smaller towns that are fully controlled by the stuff. The stuff is completely taken over. And it's kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. As soon as you talk about the stuff, everybody turns around and looks at David and looks at all the other characters, and straight away you have that uneasiness of like, yeah, these people are already gone, they're already infected by the stuff. You get that very sort of uneasy vibe, and again, it's done in such a really well done way, especially with the advertising. And again, I like how this movie's shot, where you get to see the moments with David and Jason, how sort of they're affected by the stuff, and their families are affected, and the world around them and that sort of thing. But also you get to see the advertisement, you get to see the slow growth of the amount of people that are addicted by it, and how people are addicted by it, and how it affects people and everything like that. And again, it works in the whole corporate sort of original idea of what the writer wanted to portray, was how corporate can easily just advertise things to you, and people like sheep will follow and just devour whatever it is, content or a drink or a food or whatever. Like if it's a new thing, people just flock to it and try it like sheep, because again, that's the way. I'd love to see the stuff done in a modern day setting. Because again, if you think about it, all you'd have to change is you'd have the advertisement, but you'd have streamers, and you'd have TikTokers and YouTubers and stuff like that. You'd have celebrity endorsements, and so they did the stuff in a modern day setting. The only difference is in the advertisement is that you just see more sort of streamers doing it, people on TikToks and that, and Vine stars and all that jazz, doing it instead of just normal advertisement. So it would be interesting to see the stuff in a modern sort of setting. But you just know that as soon as you see stuff in any of the scenes, that they're already gone. The characters know it already. It's too late. It's already too late. And I found it sort of scary. I didn't find the film scary, but like I mentioned, because I watched it on YouTube, and again, this just could be sort of a coincidence, but I found it kind of spooky. Was that because I was watching it on YouTube, I had a lot of adverts, but about 90% to 95% of the adverts that I saw were for yogurt, for Muller Corner. I don't know if anybody have them outside the UK, but it's a yogurt brand, Muller is. And I kept seeing things for yogurt, and the thing is, the stuff is sold as like a yogurt sort of ice cream sort of thing, and it was just like I'm watching the stuff, and then I'm getting adverts to eat yogurt, and you're seeing people, and again the yogurt in the advert was white like the stuff, which is obviously it's meant to be vanilla, but the advert's a girl licking the lid of the ice cream, and the girl does that in the film where she takes the lid off the stuff and she licks the lid of that, and I'm like, oh, what kind of advertisement is this? You know, so like again, if it's a coincidence, bravo, but it just creeped me out. I was like, I'm watching the stuff, and now I'm getting adverts to eat ice cream. It's like, is the stuff real? It's really, it really creeped me out. I'm sitting there going, this can't be a coincidence because it's too on the nose, you know. Um, and again, like Jason, he tries to rationalize all this, and his parents are already addicted to the stuff, and it gets more and more creepy with Jason's parents. You know, as he tries to sort of stop people eating it, as well as doing his best to deal with his parents, to deal with his family, his mother, his father, and his brother, how they're already gone. And he's like, the stuff, it's alive. I saw it moving. And they're trying to say, oh yeah, you know, yogurt is alive, and we eat a lot of things that are alive and that sort of thing. Which, in fairness, yes, it is true. Yogurt is basically bacteria, but it's good bacteria. It's good gut bacteria, but it is alive when you eat it, right? This is true facts. I'm not trying to freak anybody out. Like, generally, Google it. Yogurt is alive when you eat it. It's full of bacteria. That's what it's made out of, right? And people do eat fish alive and that sort of thing. So yeah, true, we do, but no, the stuff, it's like Soylent Green. Just don't eat it. Just leave it alone. You know what I mean? Like, go away. I don't want anyone near me. But Jason's story is interesting because as he's trying to stop other people from eating it, because he knows what it is, he's having to. He realizes he's not stupid, young lad. He realizes, like, I'm not eating it because I can see the effect it has on my parents. My parents have gone gaga. They've gone insane, and it's like a cult. It's like, you know, one of us, the greater good. You know, it is very much like Hot Fuzz, greater good, that sort of thing. Like they're like, join us, eat the stuff. And he doesn't want to do it, and he's trying to convince his parents of like, oh yeah, I've had the stuff, and instead he eats shaving cream. Like, he shoves this, like, they send him up to his room. He's like, you can't come downstairs so you eat the entire sort of confection of that stuff until you eat it all, and then you can be part of the family. And he comes down after flushing the stuff down the toilet. He fills it with Shoreline shaving cream, and he's eating it, trying to pretend like it's the stuff, and they're trying to get him to eat because they've thrown all the food away in the house. They're like, we no longer need food. We're having the stuff for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And his parents, you know, they're not stupid, because when you eat the stuff, you don't sleep. You don't eat anything else apart from the stuff. You do nothing. Well, you're always awake. You act weird. It's kind of like a hive mind. Like, it just takes over your mind completely. And you know, you're super fast. You're kind of like a zombie, really. Like, you're just super fast. You're super quick. And Jason basically tries his best to escape as best as he can. But again, he's how can I explain it without going into spoilers? But he tries as best as he can, and he does manage to escape. And obviously, when he does finally escape, obviously he meets David. But before he meets David, as I mentioned, David is out hunting down the stuff and what the stuff is. So while Jason's dealing with his crazy family and basically trying to figure out what it actually is sort of going on, he goes off and he's doing his sort of espionage. He's managed to finally find the town of the people who originally found the stuff. But when he finds this little town, he realizes that he can't talk to anybody. Everybody's in hiding, and everybody that he talks to acts very strange. And at this point in time, us, the audience, and David hasn't seen the effects the stuff has on people fully when it fully takes over, because it would have took over these small little towns a lot quicker than it would have took a city out. And within doing so, as he's doing his investigations, we meet Chocolate Chip Charlie, with his fists of steel, which, again, that's just not me adding it. That's a true thing. That's something that he actually says himself. You're going to need me, man, and my fists of steel. Which, again, really, really cheesy, but incredibly 80s. And I love it. I really wanted sort of I would love a buddy cop show with Charlie and David because they just work so well with each other. Because uh, David is a very sort of sarcastic, very sort of charming sort of bloke who is very much, he's clever, but like he does it for a living. He used to be a spook. He's like, yeah, whatever, man. I'm getting paid. I'm gonna find out what the stuff is. He's a very suave sort of character. And then you have Chocolate Chip Charlie, who is very sort of like kung fu sort of sidekick sort of bloke with his fists of fear. And he does like there's one moment where like he gets one of these people that's infected. They get chased off. Oh, actually, I'm jumping ahead. Basically, him and David and Charlie sort of get together and they try to figure out what is going on in a small town. They meet this bloke. He runs off. He said, "I'll be back in a minute. I've just got to go upstairs." He's gone for a bit while. They can hear weird sounds upstairs. As they're talking, they're trying to figure out what's going on. Cuts to this bloke who is on the ground. His mouth, like again, practical effects is incredible. His mouth is wide open, and the stuff, this white stuff, is just pouring out of his mouth slowly, and it's running away out of his stomach. And he's just a husk. He's just a meat sack, like a meat puppet. And they go to this door. Door won't open. David's like, "Oh well, I can't open it. Do you want to give it a go?" And like, and like Chocolate Chip Charlie is like, no problem. She's like, "Hi, really." Again, it's the 80s. They've got to have sort of the kung fu sort of things, haven't they? But he breaks the door down. They see this body. David goes to chase it. Charlie's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Well, have you got a gun?" And and then Charlie's just like, "No, I've got these fists of steel." And he's like, "Well, I wish I had a gun because if whatever that is gets me, I want you to take me out first." Again, very cheesy dialogue, but again, I find it fantastic and I love it. They go chase it, can't figure out what it is. Next thing you know, they're being chased by the townspeople. They're all like a hive mind, leave us alone, go away. They're trying to be killed. So again, they haven't got no guns, so they're using their fists. And again, Chocolate Chip Charlie, Kung Fu Master, punches a guy in the face. He just goes right through the guy's face, concaves. You can tell that the stuff is just eating away at the insides of these people that's eating it. Like it takes over your body, but it eats away at your body. Like once you've ate it, you're addicted to it, and it just eats away. And these people are just husks. They can tell there's no flesh inside anymore. They're just like a not even a meat puppet. They're just a husk. That they are just a hollow vessel that can just be broken apart into pieces. And there's a lot of many incredible sort of effects like that. And then obviously when sort of David and Charlie they get away sort of from in safety, they're all sort of walking around, be like, bloody hell, we just survived. That was really tough. They're sitting down in the diner. The guys, David says to the woman, "You got any of the stuff?" Everybody goes silent, looks, and they realize, shit, we're in another situation. We're in another hive, basically. So they try to play it cool. And luckily, the woman goes, "Oh, no, we haven't got no stuff. We can't get hold of it. Some's coming in soon." And everybody starts to calm down then. And because like David's, "Oh, it's a shame." Anyway, cut to that woman walking off, going into the back of the refrigerator, opens a door, it's full of stuff, and she just locks herself in, and I'm guessing she just engorges herself in stuff. And well, you never find what happens to her, but I imagine she ate herself to death, basically. But this is the one thing that gets me, right. So they've just gotten away from safety. They've seen what the stuff can do to people. They've gotten away from that mob. They found themselves in another nest, but now they're safe because they've managed to sort of convince this nest that they're hooked on the stuff. And then David basically goes to Charlie. He's like, "I think we're gonna need to split up." Which, if you've watched any horror movie, if you ever watch Scream or you watch any horror movie, splitting up is the worst decision ever. Right, but this is the B movie, and they make silly mistakes like this, so I let it slide. But David's like, "We're gonna have to split it up. You're gonna have to go to Washington and let the feds know what's happening, and I'm gonna go hitch a ride with this stranger that I never met who could be hooked on the stuff, but I'm gonna go with him anyway, and I'm gonna figure out how to get myself into the factory." So Charlie goes off, and you never see Charlie again until the end of the film. And then when you do, it's too late for Charlie, and then Charlie's gone. And there's this really grotesque death for Charlie as the stuff takes over him, which I won't go to spoilers, but it's a shame because I really like Charlie's character. It does come as a surprise. I feel like I've just spoiled it for anybody, so again, I do apologize there. But definitely, never split up in a horror movie. But again, as the story goes on, David eventually meets Jason, and they go off with another girl as well, which I can't remember her name. I didn't write her name down in my notes. Who is David's love interest, and that they go off and they try to find out what the stuff is and basically bring it down. So that is, in a nutshell, basically the story. Really, you have the two main characters, and they're trying their best to find out what the stuff is and to stop it. As for sort of the practical effects, again, they're incredible. They're amazing. They are so well done. Not just with sort of the sort of body horror, but also with how the stuff moves, how it works. There are times where I'm thinking, is it stop motion? Are they doing things backwards? So are they basically running the stuff down a hill so it moves down a hill? But are they running then the footage backwards to make it look like it's running uphill? If you get what I'm trying to say. So running downhill makes it look like it's running uphill, make it look like it's moving, it's alive. And obviously other moments where they have the practical effects, where they have the stuff that's on the side, and they're using probably jets underneath it to make it bubble and make it look like it's moving and then getting bigger and that sort of thing. So again, I love all these practical effects, even though I know how some of them work. For me, the magic is still there, and I love special effects and practical effects. I love how it used to be done, and I love it when modern movies still use practical effects, because I feel like those films stand the test of time more than a CGI movie will. And I've explained this in nauseum in other reviews, so I won't do it here. But I just love when practical effects are done right. And with the stuff, with it just being a white goo, a white substance, there's not much to it, but they do a lot with it. And I really appreciate it for that. Also the body horror as well is done really well. Sort of the hollow flesh shell of the people when like they're being punched or when they're being shot. Like when people are shot, there's no longer blood inside them. They are just full of stuff. They're just full of the stuff. So when they're getting shot or when they're losing limbs, it's nothing. Just white goo is pouring out of them. Is like cascading and dribbling out of their eyes and their face, and the bullet wounds or the big gape holes where like limbs used to be. And I love that effect. It's like, yeah, it wouldn't be blood, would it? The stuff it takes over, it really eats away at everything, and it literally, you are just a hollow husk of a shell of whatever you used to be. So that's really good. But one of the best things about this film in terms of the practical effects that I really liked and I really enjoyed was that they took a note out of the Nightmare on Elm Street movie. There's one scene where you had this whole moving room, and I'll explain the scene, then I'll explain how they did it in that film and how they did it in how I would imagine they do it in the stuff. So there's a scene in Nightmare on Elm Street where you have Johnny Depp's character, and he's in his bed, and there's a moment where he's sucked actually into the bed, and as he's sucked into the bed and his sheet goes in with him, then there's a huge cascade of blood that just fills the room, and it goes everywhere. And how they basically did that, they basically built the set of the bedroom, and they built it on kind of like, best way to explain it is kind of like a cement mixer. So, but it's a giant set that revolves around, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. And Johnny Depp probably would have been pulled down, and they would have been harnessed, and that they would have had at the top, they would have had like a giant pressurized container full of this blood or liquid they ever wanted to use. And then as the room went round, the camera would stay steady, but it would look as if the blood was going everywhere, that it was just cascading all around, and that the room was spinning, which the room was spinning, but the camera's stationed center, and it's like a gyro, so you can't tell the room is spinning. It's a really well done effect, and it's been used before, but it was done best in Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's one of the best scenes in the franchise, in my opinion. Where they did it here in the stuff, so there was a moment where David and his love interest, who is sort of the woman who made sort of all the sort of advertisement and publicity for the stuff, she actually came up with the name of calling it the stuff, and that sort of thing. And um, she basically said that she feels bad and that she wants to get down to figure out how can she make amends for getting people hooked on something that is so deadly. So as they're trying to figure out what's going on, they basically go down to sort of the main factory where the stuff is being made and manufactured. They try to figure out how the stuff is made. The people are like, no, 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 we can't tell you that. That's a secret. But I tell you what, we've put you in a hotel room. We'll just go stay there. And then tomorrow we'll have breakfast, and then we'll talk you around for the rest of the factory, right? So they're like, okay, no problem. So they go off to the hotel room. They're trying to sleep. While they're sleeping, the stuff is starting to seep through the pillow, and it jumps on David's face, and it's like a face hug. It wraps around his face. Luckily, the girl he's with, she burns it off his face, miraculously not scalding and burning him as well. Burns off his face. And the bloke comes in. He's obviously hooked on the stuff as well. He jumps in. He's like, "I'm going to kill you! Leave us alone!" David managed to get him off, and then the bed just explodes full of the stuff, and you can see the stuff, and it gets spurted up against this one far wall with the bloke in tow, and it's just being sprayed up this one wall, and it's going up and around the wall. It's moving around the room, all practically done, all actually done, but how I would imagine they did it was the same concept of Nightmare on Elm Street. Is where they would have had a revolving set. They would have a revolving room that just went round. Well, in this case, anti-clockwise, but they could go either way. But that's how I would imagine they pulled that effect off. But it was done really, really well here as well. Obviously, Nightmare on Elm Street is the standard of how that effect is done, and I think that's where that effect originated. I'm not sure entirely, but I think that's where that effect was originated there. But that's the standard, and the stuff did it, and it did it quite well. So I got to commend it for that. But my overall sort of thoughts of this movie is, as you can tell, I really, really enjoyed it. I try my best to stay away from spoilers a bit. I know I kind of dropped a bit of a spoiler with Chocolate Chip Charlie, but they split up. You've seen, if you're new to horror movie, well, if you're not new to horror movies and you've seen them before, you know that splitting up is a bad idea. And because we don't see him to the end of the movie, it was obvious what was going to happen. So again, it wasn't much of a spoiler. If you're clever enough, you would have noticed it yourself. But I do apologize for that. But overall, I just love this film. I'm glad that I sat down to watch it, and again, I want to thank Freddie Prinze Jr. And That Was Pretty Scary podcast for turning me on to this film, to make me go, you know what, I'm going to give it a go because it sounds interesting, and it's far more interesting when you watch it and you actually see the events unfold. Absolutely fascinating film. My overall opinion is, again, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's on YouTube for free. If you have seen it, watch it again. It's definitely like a popcorn sort of film that you can put on, turn your brain off, and just sit and enjoy. It's silly. I was laughing. I was giggling. I love the body horror. I love the practical effects. Like, again, as of now, so far, not a single one of these movies that I've watched for Halloween has disappointed me. If anything, they have just gotten better with each film. They've just got better in quality. So far, it is sort of, for me, it's so far I would say it is Killer Clowns from Outer Space, The Stuff, and Critters. The Critters. That's what I've got it ranked at the minute. But we've got one more film to go after this one, and that one is a favourite of mine, but I won't go into that yet. You have to wait till next week for that one, for our final one that we do for Halloween. But this is an incredible film. I loved it, and I've just enjoyed all of them so far. And maybe it's because I've watched so many in such a short period of these type of films that I don't know what to expect, and I'm just going in to have fun. That I'm expecting to have fun, so I do have fun, but also I'm expecting nothing, and I'm getting loads more in return. I think that's why I'm enjoying them so much, or again, it's a newfound enjoyment, or it could just down to be the fact that these are just good movies, that they're just good, fun popcorn films, the kind of films that you used to go to the cinema to watch. That there's no, like, at the end of this film, there's no hint of a sequel. There's no hint. There's no end credit scene, anything like that. It's generally like cut, print. That's your movie. Done. On to the next one. And I like that. Not everything needs a sequel. Not everything needs hinting of what could come next. Just the fact of you got the stuff. People are addicted to the stuff. We've got to stop the stuff. Can you stop the stuff? And I love that. So overall, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. And it's free on YouTube, so you've got no excuse. And if you pay for no ads on YouTube, you could watch it all without any ads. But even so, maybe you get as lucky as me, and you'll get weird jogger ads while you're trying to watch the stuff and be completely creeped out and spooked out by that semi-coincidence. Yeah, I'm on to you, corporate overlords. I know what you're trying to pull. But yeah, absolutely fantastic film. I really love it. But before we get on to the end, I've got 2 bits of trivia for you. As I did for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I chose some trivia for the film that I wanted to add at the end here. So, according to Larry Cohen himself, the writer and director of the stuff, in some scenes in which the stuff chases characters, a foam made of blended fish bones was used. It stank so much that as soon as the shots were done, the actors ran to a river in order to bathe and get rid of the stench. Ugh, that's disgusting. My second bit of trivia for you is, according to the audio commentary on the 2000 Anchor Bay DVD version of the stuff, some of the substance props or stand-ins for the real stuff used in the movie included lots of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, yogurt, and for one scene involving an enormous avalanche-like effect of stuff crashing through a wall, fire-extinguishing foam was used. Other shots, such as the ones of the giant Laker stuff, required superimposed images and animation. So that's your trivia for the stuff. Hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're a fan of the film, did you know those bits of trivia? Did you not know them? I found them quite fascinating. But yeah, so that is my thoughts and feelings and my overall review of the stuff from 1985. If you like this and that you want to see more from me, or you want to hear more from me, should I say, then you're more than welcome to check out weeks 1 and week 2, where I looked into other B-tier horror 80s classics, like Critters was week 1 and Killer Clowns from Outer Space was week 2. I've got more stuff to come, not just in Halloween, but for the rest of the year. So if you're interested, make sure that you follow me on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod, and I'll update everything that I'm watching and doing on there. Also, if you are listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're not subscribed yet, just go onto YouTube and type in the Nerdstalgic podcast and you'll find me there. Don't forget to click the notification bell to be kept up to date for when I upload every episode, or a new episode every Sunday. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating. Currently, 22 lovely people have given me a rating. I'm currently at a 4.8, which is pretty good, to be honest. But I want to try and get to 25 to 30 people, which I'm really close. So 1 to 5 stars, whatever you feel like is fair. Rate me on Spotify. And yeah, so that has been week 3 of my B-tier horror extravaganza. I'm really looking forward to next week. No spoilers, no giveaway of what the topic is going to be. But I will say it's not 80s horror. I've moved away from there. It's still B-tier, but it's not 80s. It's a bit more modern than that. But it's one that I love, and it's a horror film that I recommend to everybody, that they should go out and watch. But that's all you're getting from me. You're not getting any more out of me. So until then, I am Luke, your host. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. And remember, stay away from the stuff.